When thinking about why the DCEU or DC movies are always kind of dividing their audiences in some shape or form, or at least when it comes to rather the hardcore audiences, I feel like there is a real problem with the whole franchise and the whole management of the franchise itself. And in this video, I would like to give you a few of my examples of what the real problems of the DCEU actually are. And to start things off with, I would say that the biggest problem with these films and what especially the DCEU films faced, even from starting from 2013 with Man of Steel, were the unrealistic expectations. And what I mean by that is the expectations for a movie were not necessarily based off the promotional material presented to the audience. And what I mean by that is when BVS dropped, there was a rift created in the fandom where people were just nitpicking the hell out of the movie instead of critiquing what was already there. They were talking about what wasn't there and they were critiquing it because that certain thing was not there that they wanted to be there, or they thought that it should have been the story. And to me, and to basically everybody who looks or likes to look at films from an objective lens, I think this is one of the worst things that you can do to an artist and to art itself, to critique it for what it is not. I tend to look back at the promotional materials, especially for Batman v Superman, as there was, of course, a huge rift created, or seemingly there was a huge rift created, or outroar of cries from the fans, quote unquote, of course. I always look back at the trailers and the promotional materials released, and when I looked back at Man of Steel, I never actually saw the movie in theaters. I watched BVS like 3 or 4 times before I even saw Man of Steel. And I didn't have any expectations towards it. I watched the movie and then I watched the promotional materials, the trailers for it. And the trailers conveyed what the movie actually was, because guess what? The director was mostly in charge of the promotional material being released. Same goes for BVS, is that when I watched the trailers, I never actually seen any trailers before I saw the movie, so I didn't have any preconceived notions of what it would be. But when I watch now the trailers for it, I literally don't understand how people can say the things that they say about that movie still, is because what you see in those trailers is exactly what you get in the movie. Like, it's not this type of false advertising that happened at Justice League back in 2017, that they knew that the movie was a big pile of trash, but they still advertised Zack's shots, which were a million times better than what we got in theaters. But another important point to me is that the preconceived notions or even the unreasonable expectations concerning these movies did them no favor at all, and especially mean that towards Batman v Superman. As when Batman v Superman was announced, people were going crazy all over the place, instead of paying attention to the promotional materials, the trailers that I mentioned before. That I remember reading comments under the Dark Knight Returns animated movie's music that Zack Snyder better put this into the movie itself, and I'm like, why? You know, just because his Batman is derivative of Dark Knight Returns Batman, it doesn't mean that he should use the exact same theme, because it doesn't necessarily fit with the character. And we know that it really doesn't fit with the character. But people were expecting things like that. And even like a few days ago, I've wandered into Reddit for whatever reason. Reddit is a forum that I don't use. And I read a post asking that will Darkseid say iconic lines in Justice League, something like, I am entropy, I am death, I am Darkseid. And to me, it was like, why would he say things like that? You know, you're setting unreasonable expectations for yourself, because let's be honest, this is Darkseid's first appearance in the DCEU or the Snyderverse. And we know that he is going to have his own history within the film. It's like expecting Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor to be the definitive version of Lex Luthor, even though you know that he is not going to be, because he kind of ends up being the definitive Lex Luthor at the end of BVS, right? When he gets his head shaven. I mean, yeah, Darkseid's gonna have iconic lines in the movie, but he's not going to be, or he's not necessarily going to be the definitive version of the character yet. I don't necessarily know if he's going to be, but I don't expect him to be there yet. And even this goes back to Lex Luthor as well, as that a lot of people wanted Bryan Cranston to be the Lex Luthor, of Batman v Superman. I think it's a reasonable expectation for him to be Lex Luthor, but you have to understand that the director and the creative individuals regarding a movie did not want to go down that route because it would have been so obvious, and they wanted to tell a different story. And a lot of people don't necessarily respect that art is something that you don't necessarily have control over. You either enjoy it or even you don't necessarily enjoy it, but you don't have control over it, and that's why it's so good. Or even the biggest one that I'm always faced with is that I know these characters because I have seen the X and Y shows and movies. And, I don't think I have to talk about this at length because we know it's absolutely nonsensical to just use this argument because of the interpretations of these characters. And another really important point, especially when it comes to us individuals, is that we have our inherent biases towards certain characters. Most importantly, the Nolan Batman character, or like Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy, as a lot of people grew up with those movies, and I'm including myself in the bracket as well, and we are really emotionally attached to that version of Batman because that was our introduction to kind of the Batman mythos, and not necessarily the geek culture, but to just Batman's mythological presence in a whole. And a lot of people said that, they watch those movies and they know everything about Batman, which is, I knew I did because after The Dark Knight Rises, I was like, I've seen everything regarding this character, so I don't have to watch Batman v Superman or something, which is clearly hypocritical and ignorant. And I think a lot of people really think this way when they watch these movies. And they often go like, I have my favorite Batman and this one won't surpass that mindset when they go into these films. And to me, it's like, that's cool. But every Batman is a different Batman. Every Batman focuses on different aspects, and this is what makes them unique in the end. There is no definitive version of Batman, because even if you compare the Robert Pattinson Batman with Ben Affleck's Batman, Ben Affleck's Batman fights against Darkseid, while Robert Pattinson's Batman is a kind of an ultra-realistic Batman, something like the Christopher Nolan one. He's not gonna fight against cosmic beings, if you know what I mean. You can't really compare the two, even if you really wanted to. You can compare the performances, that's kind of where the similarities can end. And when it comes to just different interpretations, when you liken and measure them against each other, you end up with things like when you compare Ben Affleck's Batman to Christian Bale's Batman. It's like, I've read comments under the BVS Warehouse fight that it said it's considered unrealistic because Batman fights 4 thugs at the same time, and therefore it's considered bad for whatever reason. It's not realistic. But when you watch BVS, that Batman feels much more realistic than the Christian Bale Batman, because the Christian Bale Batman is much more grounded in reality. The Batman loses his mythological character, whereas in BVS, he still has that mythological era, this Bat mythos around him, like he is a creature of the night. And I feel like that you can't pit these different interpretations against each other because it's just not a constructive conversation to have. And maybe one of the biggest problems that the DCEU has ever faced, the biggest villain in the history of DC films, is the studio itself, Warner Brothers. But what I mean by that is that Warner Brothers never fully supported their directors, especially Zack Snyder, who was the core of this DC universe from the beginning with Man of Steel, with BVS. And they didn't even communicate their plans clearly to the audience. Everybody remembers they releasing a slate with a bunch of movies like JL1, JL Part 2, Batman, Cyborg, Green Lantern Corps, whatever. But they didn't communicate that the Justice League movies were actually a 5-arc Superman story to begin with. They never actually said anything like that. And if that was actually communicated with the fans from the beginning, people would have been a lot more forgiving of these movies not giving you everything for... basically not giving away everything like in BVS. Nobody really understood what the Nightmare meant. And that was for a reason. Like, when you read Dune, for the first 20 pages, you're going to be like, what the hell is happening here? But as you move with the story forward, you will unravel and understand what that was in the first few pages of the book. And, you know, this is what we were going to get with the nightmare stuff. And I remember reading an article around 2015 or 2016, is that why didn't Zack Snyder cast Grant Gustin for The Flash? And he said that they were going for this multiverse approach from the beginning, and this was from around 2015. But even Warner Brothers failed to do that from the start, and even Zack has stated that they were going for this multiverse approach, which would give full creative control to the individual directors. But of course, now Warner Brothers is going with the multiverse because they have absolutely no idea what to do with the IP. And maybe the biggest hurdle with Warner Brothers is that they have tried to... I'm trying really hard not to curse here, but they have leaked the Snyder Cut today on HBO Max in the place of Tom and Jerry. They have literally tried to sabotage their biggest project ever, their biggest IP ever. And how do we know that Warner Brothers leaked that stuff? Is because the head of Warner Brothers is in charge of the HBO Max division with the day-and-day streaming and movie theater releases. Make of it what you will, but this does not look good on Warner Brothers, and they are losing the loyal and hardcore fans like me and a lot of other people on Twitter who would like to watch DC films and enjoy them, but they don't allow us to enjoy these films because they want to mess with every single little thing, from removing Ray Fisher from The Flash because he rightfully so spoke up against the company, and from just Zack Snyder getting his way and getting his movie released, which they botched in the first place, and now they will look insanely dumb when Zack Snyder's Justice League releases on March 18th on HBO Max. But that is all I wanted to say for today. Thank you so much for watching this video. I would love to know all of your thoughts in the comments down below regarding what the real problem with the DCEU actually was. Do you think it was the studio? Do you think it was the unrealistic expectations, or a bit of both, biases? Whatever your opinion is, I would love to hear that in the comments down below. And leave a like if you have enjoyed the video, subscribe for more content like this one, and I will see you in the next one. And until then, remember to keep it insightful.